G'day, it's Friday, 10th of April 2026. My name's George Louis. I'd like to present to you today's message of hope. Well, someone in Richmond spray painted "Sack Voss" on the side of a cafe this week. Now, I want to be upfront about something immediately here. I am a football fan, Australian football rules, but not a Carlton supporter. And I want that on record early. So now you know. So, the cafe staff, apparently also not a Carlton supporters, have made it clear that they had nothing to do with it. That's plausible. Someone else did. Someone else who felt strongly enough about the Blues, which is Carlton, coaching situation, to buy spray paint, find a wall and leave a public statement for the world to read. It takes a bit of effort, doesn't it? And I've been thinking about that since I read it. I wasn't entirely surprised. I've read the stories. I mean, fans throwing plastic bottles at players, fans punching each other in the stands, which is disgraceful. The AFL generates an intensity in people that can go to genuinely strange places, doesn't it? And back in the late 1980s, I watched a documentary on the ABC. It was exploring various religions, and one section made me laugh, and then I stopped laughing because when I thought about it, you see, the presenter made the case that Australian football rules functions as a religion for a significant number of Australians. Isn't that interesting? It provided tribal identity. We're talking about sacred rituals. It's a community that gathers weekly around something larger than themselves. Interesting. It gave a sense of belonging that gives the ordinary week a shape and a meaning it wouldn't otherwise have. I found that genuinely amusing, don't you? And then I thought about it properly. The thing that commands your deepest loyalty, the thing that organizes your Saturdays, or Sundays now these days, the thing that genuinely devastates you when it goes wrong. Yeah, the thing that drives a person to a cafe wall at some point in the week, spray can in their hand. Hello. Now, I'm not saying football is wrong because I enjoy it myself. More on my own relationship with it in a moment, of course. But that documentary planted something I keep returning to. Because here's what I think the presenter was really pointing at. Not just football, but the whole pattern. We all have things that consume our hours, don't we? Not always dramatically, it's true, but just quietly and steadily, without implicit permission, given so gradually we don't notice leaving. And those hours don't come back ever again. It's just impossible. It doesn't work that way. You cannot recover yesterday's hours. Well, if you've got a time machine, let me know. I'm happy to put down a deposit for it. There is no 25th hour available to anyone, which is why this passage has been sitting with me. It's from Paul's letter to Ephesians. You'll find in chapter 5, verses 15 to 17. This is what it says. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise but as wise, making the best use of time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Alrighty. Making the best use of the time, it says. These are the word that Paul uses carries the idea of redeeming, buying back something already lost. As if time is a resource that's been hemorrhaging and the response isn't panic or self-condemnation, but simply look at where it's going. Start there. Not as unwise, but as wise. Not failing catastrophically, no. Just walking carefully and paying attention. Is this kind of conversation useful to you? Is it? If you do, please subscribe, hit the like button, and share my videos far and wide. Because new episodes here are every day, and this is exactly the territory that I will cover. Now, here's the image I genuinely cannot shake off my mind. Yeah, Pontius Pilate presents two men to the crowd, Jesus of Nazareth, a man who really is a God-man, who had healed the blind, raised the dead, fed thousands from almost nothing, spoken with an authority that astonished everyone who heard him, right there in front of them. And Barabbas, the murderer. The crowd shouts, "Crucify him, release Barabbas." Picture that in your head. Because I want to say something carefully here. I'm not making this point to condemn anyone in that crowd. But think about what that moment actually was. There was nothing passive about it. I couldn't see it. This was intensity. This was conviction. And people who felt something deeply and said it publicly and loudly. What they directed all of that towards was demanding the death of one man who could have completely changed every one of their lives. I wonder, did they think about that? What if that same intensity had gone the other way? What if those hours, the days and weeks before that morning had been spent listening to what he said, watching what he did? I mean, taking seriously the question of who he actually was. I can't tell you I would have been any different. None of us that. None of us know that. But every time I read that account, I feel the weight of the waste, the sadness of it. Yeah? An encounter of the Son of God, and that's how the morning was spent. I should probably tell you something at this point. Here we go. I'm a Collingwood supporter. Which means, and I say this with complete awareness of what it implies, I am perhaps not the most neutral observer of the Carlton coaching situation. But here's what I want to say clearly. I wouldn't encourage any of it. Not the graffiti, not the bottles at player, certainly not the fists in the stands. Not because I'm above caring about results, but because those hours cost something real and leave nothing worth leaving behind. Which brings me to my story in Singapore. So when my family and I lived there, we didn't have a television. Not because we were especially principled about it, right? I wasn't prepared to pay a TV license just to watch non-cable television. I can't remember if Netflix happened. Probably not. It didn't exist in those days. But back in Australia, we would have had free-to-air TV and nobody paid a cent for it. So the Singapore arrangement felt like an imposition. It was honestly more of an act of stubbornness than virtue on my part. Yes, I said it. Because here's what happened in the stubbornness. My wife would spend evenings helping the kids with their homework, and I would find ways to occupy myself. Well, at first it was just reading. Then I started researching seriously. Researching how to become a better networker, how to connect with people in ways that actually open doors. I felt that Singapore had an energy around entrepreneurship I hadn't encountered. I better let this car go first. Oh, they're not going. And Singapore, yeah, there was something in me that wanted to be part of it. The rain's coming. I started studying Microsoft Office Suite. It's raining. I wonder if that neighbor will tell me off. Anyway, I spent hours in Word and Excel. Not because I found pivot tables inherently thrilling, but because I wanted to become a Microsoft certified trainer. And I did. I got that qualification in Singapore. Got some gigs and a side hustle that actually worked. And I also got into network marketing too during that period. I have to be honest, I wasn't commercially successful at it. It was my first ever venture. And that's the accurate version. But I learned things from it and I still draw on. Skills I would never develop if I'd been watching television after dinner. Would have been a waste of time then. And somewhere in all of that, I started dreaming, dreaming about the future. Genuinely dreaming about what it might look like to meet more people, to build something, to start a business one day. Well, the dreams expanded to fill the space they had opened up. And of course, none of that happened by design. I chose to be stubborn about TV license. God chose what came next, or allowed to be next. Now look carefully then how you would walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of your time. That verse lands differently now than the first time you heard it in a few minutes ago, I hope. So for me, it's not a rebuke. It's just an invitation to look at what might grow in a space that opens up when the hours go somewhere else. Hey, that person in Richmond may be a perfectly decent human being. I don't know. We never know. I mean that genuinely. But the hours given to that wall are gone, and a coaching situation, that will resolve itself one way or the other, come next season regardless. My friends, what are you spray painting these days? Not literally, I don't mean it that way, but where does the intensity of your devotion go? Where's the hour after dinner going? Because the God who numbered every hair on your head also numbered the hours in your life. And I don't think he numbered them so you could discover at the end that most of them went towards the wall that got washed clean a week later. No. So I was stubborn about TV license in Singapore. God used that stubbornness to make room for something I hadn't known to ask for. Let me ask you, what might he make room for you in your life, if you allow him to do so? Thanks for being with me today. I better run before the rain starts pouring even more. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.